I love the name of your show.
Yeah. Well, welcome to another exciting episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Light Beer Man Chris Clements, and Sean Noble, our Dark Money man, is not here today, and I'm here with former Congressman, Gubernatorial candidate, and all-around good guy, Matt Salmon.
Chris, great to be here again.
Thank you for being here yet again, because we did this once before, and unfortunately there was something wrong with the audio.
But this time we're going to get it right.
We're going to get it right because we're in a new studio.
That's right.
And we're able to
and nice
capture
digs. Look at the view out there. I mean, it's
well, we have a new logo too. I don't know if you've seen
I
that.
saw it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So we're on Twitter now. We're tweeting out a lot and
Well, you got bragging
fun.
rights because you got a Mormon on a light beer show here.
That is true. That is true. I wasn't going to go there, but that's fine. We absolutely could. Yeah, a Mormon. But what are some of the great Mormon jokes you know about beer?
So one of them is, do you know why you always invite more than one Mormon when you go fishing?
Why?
If you only invite one, they'll drink all your beer.
All your beer.
Right.
Yeah, that's the oldest one.
Old joke.
Yeah, that's the oldest one. Well, we don't want to go there too much. But thank you so much for being here. Really great that you're in the arena yet again, sharing your ideas of conservatism, your vision for the state of Arizona. So what possessed you to want to jump in the governor's race?
As I look where we were even a year ago as a society, as a state, things were going pretty well. Our economy was doing pretty well. We were energy independent. Our border was getting secured. And what a difference a year's made. I mean, it's been, going to hell in a handbasket. And it just frightens me. I think about, I say this in my stump speech everywhere I go, but my mom and dad grew up during the Great Depression. My dad went and fought against the Japanese in World War II in New Guinea, a hellhole. And he was the Browning automatic rifle guy. So he was the first guy that Japanese snipers wanted to pick off because he had the most firepower. But Tom Brokaw called them the greatest generation. I think they were. They fought off two, horrible, horrible actors, Nazi Germany and Japan at the time. And nobody expected us to do well. We weren't the first couple of years, but we dug in, and Americans found, the stick-to-itiveness and the ability to do what we had to do to win that war. And my parents left me a far better America than they inherited.
Yeah.
Every parent wants to do that for their children and their grandchildren. Chris, I can't say that right now.
Yeah, that's the promise of America.
And Ronald Reagan said that freedom's always just one generation away from extinction. And I just feel that right now is the time for somebody that has the ability to stand up and fight to do so. And I do have that ability. I've been fighting all my life. Much more so, when I was in Congress, I had to fight against Obama in the morning and my Republican leaders in the afternoon. And there's a lot of sellouts out there, a lot of folks that we trust when they make campaign promises to do the right thing. I actually think that's why Trump was so successful, because he actually followed through on the campaign promises he made, and that was sadly different than it had been with a lot of other people.
That was kind of the running joke in Washington, D.C., right? That, okay, America's elected this guy, and he actually might do what he said he's going to do.
Right. And for me, when I went back this last time to Congress, wanting to stop Obama and his policies, whether it was dealing with partial birth abortion or gun confiscation or taking over the whole healthcare system with the federal government, I was trying to fight him at every turn, and I thought everybody on our side of the fence was on that same fight,
Sure.
But they weren't, and they weren't doing the things that they promised the American public, our voters, that they were going to do. And so I ended up working with Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows and Ron DeSantis, and we formed the Freedom Caucus to go back and fight against really a Republican Party that was always wanting to cave in and not fight the fight. And so we were trying to, bolster them up and get them to do the right thing. And I feel we really ended up paving the way for MAGA. But the Freedom Caucus is a group I'm really proud of, and they've really done an amazing job. And if we didn't have them, heaven help us.
Yeah. Now, what do you think that is? What do you think when you look back and you look at the Republican Party back then, and you look at the fights that were being fought, and you look at, you made the statement just now that the leadership was not willing to fight those fights.
Right.
Why was that?
I think
give our listeners a little bit of color.
I think there's several reasons. Number one, I think they wanted to cater to the K Street crowd. And for those that don't understand K Street, those are the big lobbyists.
Sure.
And they're very interested in keeping everything status quo. Don't ripple any waters. Then also, I think they were under the delusion that somehow they could make the media like them if they ended up being a bunch of watered down Democrats. But the fact is, that never happened either. And so our leaders were really reticent to fight the fight. And even though there was a nucleus of people that wanted to fight the fight, we couldn't get them to do it. And so once we started the Freedom Caucus, our first order was to go and get rid of Boehner. And so 3 of us got nominated by the Freedom Caucus guys, me and Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan, to go into Boehner's office and tell him, we got the votes to vacate the chair. You need to leave. And 2 days later, we resigned. And I'm happy that happened. Sad thing is, then we got Paul Ryan, and Paul wasn't any stronger. And we've got to have people that are willing to fight the fight.
In Paul's defense, because in Paul's defense, that wasn't a job that he wanted, right?
No, he didn't want it.
He wanted to be Ways and Means chair until he left Congress,
right?
And he was a policy wonk,
right?
He grew up like a lot of us during the day with in think tanks and what have you, and he just wanted to get things done on the budget and on taxes.
I think you're probably right, but
nobody else would want that job.
But there are people that like Jim Jordan, who's one of my favorite people,
sure,
because he really fights to protect the Constitution. He fights for the things.
Who we've never seen with a sport coat on, by the way, just never.
No. He's a former wrestling. Well, he's still a wrestling coach. His 2 sons are on the wrestling teams. He's a great guy, and we need to get somebody like a Jim Jordan. Andy Biggs, our congressman here in Arizona, he'd be a fantastic Speaker of the House. But the problem is, it all gets back to the money.
Yeah.
The National Republican Congressional Committee, once you get elected, all it's about is feeding that beast, and then they dole out the money to the candidates they want to win, and it's a cabal, and it's got to be changed. It's got to be broken, and that's the Freedom Caucus was kind of a breath of fresh air. This was an idea that let's get back to fighting for everyday folks instead of being the party of corporate America or Wall Street. Let's be the party of everyday folks and families that are struggling to put braces on their kids or send their kids to college. We need to be out there fighting for them and the small business owners. They're the backbone of America. And I think that's one of the things the Freedom Caucus tried to change, that Trump ultimately did change, that we weren't the party of the fat cats. We were the party of regular people.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about that. And so you ran for governor several years ago.
Right, 2002.
And lost just by a smidge.
How does Don Knotts lost by that much?
By that much.
Right.
And so you're running again. So what is your vision now for the state? What are the things that you're seeing? What are the things you want to do differently?
Well, for one thing, I think we need a governor that's going to start asserting the 10th Amendment. Mm-hmm. And Chris, you and I have talked about that before, but the Founding Fathers, I think they envisioned such a time as this, where the federal government would become too bloated, too big, too powerful. And so they created a separation between the federal government and the states. When we talk about separation of powers, we always talk about the judicial and the legislative and the administrative. But the other really important separation of powers is between the states and the federal government. And the 10th Amendment says that any powers not invested in this document, Constitution, are left to the people in the states. And that's most of the power really in America. Even though the federal government keeps usurping more and more power, I believe they've done it unconstitutionally so. And we need to have strong leaders at the helm in the states that are willing to stand up and say, you know what, we're not going to do it that way. And that's why I want to be governor of Arizona, because I believe that we have a responsibility to stand up for the things that are unique to Arizona. We have more opportunity, more growth, more freedom than any other state in the union, and we want to keep it that way.
Yeah, that's tremendous. So what sort of things you said? You just before we started recording, you just got back from the border.
I just got back from the border.
You were visiting down in Pinal County, which has been the epicenter of the border issues in the state for decades.
And one of the things that I was with Sheriff Lamb this morning, and we were looking at the different places where they would drop people off. in the desert. And we saw, I texted you one of the pictures, but we saw all kinds of trash strewn all over the place. Where are the environmentalists on that stuff?
Yeah.
And, clothing, carpet, shoes, so that they won't leave tracks in the desert and they'll be more quiet. Camouflage clothing, camouflage backpacks, water jugs everywhere, strewn all over the desert. And Sheriff Lamb shared an interesting statistic with me, but 50% of all the illicit drugs in the United States are coming through Arizona.
Yeah.
Coming through our border. 50% of all the illicit drugs in the whole country are coming through our border here on the Arizona border. And it's not just, as Joe Biden and others, it's just innocent people trying to make a better life. In fact, just a couple weeks ago, they captured a guy that was a child rapist coming through the Yuma border.
Yeah.
And so we are being invaded. I know that a lot of people don't like that word, but when you look and see what I saw on the border today and all this stuff strewn across the desert, camouflage clothing, I mean, it's frightening. And these people that they're transporting across the border are also carrying drugs. Many of them are.
Well, I mean, some statistics were released this week.
1.7 million.
Well, I was going to say 1.6, but 1.7, sure.
1.7 million that have been apprehended. Apprehended. That's not the people that got away. So we don't. It could be double that number, but 1.7 million just in the last fiscal year, and that translates to about 4,600 people a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, we're going to hit 2 million people who have come in this, if not more, who have come in this country illegally
and I've been to the
1 year.
Yuma sector as well, and you're seeing plane tickets that are dropped on the ground, and flight itineraries and passports and things like that, and they're from all over the world. They're not just coming from Mexico and Central America. They're coming from all over the world, and I think that Sheriff Wilmot down in Yuma has said that it's into the probably 40 different countries that they're having people come from all these different countries in the world. We've heard a lot about Haiti, with the Del Rio situation, the people under the bridge, but we're having people come from Bahrain and Iran, and I mean it's a frightening thing. And how many of them are terrorists that are coming across our soil? And should we be frightened? Damn straight we should be frightened. This is an invasion, and we've got to do everything within our power. If the federal government's not going to enforce our borders, then we need to.
So, I mean, give us your platform in terms of what you would do differently than what the current governor is doing.
Well, several things. Obviously, I would be a lot more willing to use the National Guard whenever and however possible. But the other thing is, I think we need to beef up our own state laws. The feds won't allow us to arrest people just based on, violating the border policies. But if they violate a state law, we have every wherewithal to arrest. Well, trespass is a state law.
Sure.
And one of the things that they did in Texas, and I want the state legislature to do the same thing, is that if they declare a disaster area, the penalties for violating state laws, all state laws, go way up. And I'd like to do the same thing here in Arizona. So declare a disaster area. What they did was declared the areas where the illegal immigration is the most heinous within Texas, disaster areas. And that way, in Texas, their border sheriffs are arresting people. They are incarcerating them. I'd like to do the same thing here in Arizona and then send the bill to the federal government for the incarceration because they are not doing their job.
Well, a lot of it is orchestrated, though, too. Isn't there ample evidence for that?
Well, you mean as far as the cartels?
Well, not only just the cartels, because I think you're reaching a tipping point with the cartels.
Right.
We're seeing that in Texas, obviously, with the violence.
Right.
And cartels, shooting sniper bullets over the border.
Right.
And it's just a matter of time before that escalates. And we haven't declared any of the cartels terrorists,
and
which
they need to
should.
I've been saying
Correct.
that everywhere I go. And as I talked to Sheriff Lamb this morning, he said, Matt, if we did that, it'd be a game changer.
It would be a game changer.
Because then we can bring in our military.
Well, then we can engage.
We can engage, but we can also engage other countries. And we should get other countries as well to declare them terrorist organizations. Look, the cartels used to be really powerful in Colombia, remember?
Yeah.
And the United States put together a plan called Plan Colombia. We put in, lots of effort with our DEA, but we also found that we got a guy elected president there. We didn't get him elected; they did, but President Uribe in Colombia, and he's just said no more. And they worked with the United States. We've got to develop a relationship with Mexico where they're helping us on the problem. The cartels are a scourge to them, more so than probably anybody. But they are our problem
because they're terrorizing their own citizens.
And they're terrorizing their own citizens. They're killing people indiscriminately. But also, when we think about what's happening with the trafficking at the border, this isn't innocent stuff. They're doing human trafficking. They're selling people into slavery. They're killing kids. If the parents don't pony up additional money for ransom, they're cut off their ear and send it in an envelope to say that they mean business. And if the parents don't pony up the extra money, they're killing the kids.
Sure.
And they're leaving people to die in the desert. A substantial amount of the women that are being trafficked across the border are being raped by the cartel people. They're trafficking drugs. 92% of all the fentanyl in this country is coming across our border, our Arizona border. And is fentanyl a killer? Absolutely. And what blows me away is you talk to some folks and they say, well, if you didn't have the demand in the United States, then Mexico wouldn't have the supply. That is the biggest cop-out I've ever heard in my life. So it's okay for these killers and thugs to be selling poison to our kids? I talked to a woman whose son was an athlete. He bought a Soma, which, for those that don't know what that is, it's a muscle relaxant.
Sure.
He bought a Soma over the internet. It was laced with fentanyl. He overdosed and died.
Yeah,
I mean,
you told that same story before.
It's happening.
Tragic.
It's happening all across America. I know,
and we all know where fentanyl comes from. It doesn't really come from Mexico.
No, it's coming from China.
Yes,
it's coming from China, but it's coming through Mexico.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge problem, and what I was getting to with my comment about being orchestrated is that it seems like the administration is allowing this to happen. This is their policy.
Yeah.
Their policy is not to have a policy. And so therefore the states have to step up.
Right. Their policy is not to have a policy. And when you sit down and you talk with the border agents and the ICE folks, they're beside themselves. I mean, they want to do their job.
Yeah, because for 4 years they actually had clear expectations, clear guidelines, and they were able to do their job.
And they entered those jobs wanting to do their jobs. Like me, when I got elected, they raise their right hand and they say, I swear to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, right now, it's sad to say, but most of the enemies of that Constitution are domestic. And this wink and a nod policy of allowing people, almost welcoming them to come to the United States illegally is just exacerbating the problem more and more and more. In some areas, we've seen 2,000% increases since Biden started office.
And it seems unfathomable to me because if you look at why Trump was elected, one of the biggest issues was the border crisis.
It was.
And
when he started building the wall,
and everybody can go back and forth about the wall, but it wasn't just about that. It was just enforcing the laws that were on the books, which were not being done at the time.
Right.
And for Biden to embrace an open borders policy, which is precisely what he's done because the far left has brought him there, if he wasn't there already, it's just creating this vacuum again for.
Well, and you know what?
For candidates to fill with who want to solve the crisis at the border, and so now you're seeing Biden's poll numbers. His number one poll drop is on the border.
Right, and the fact is, and I'm going to let out a dirty little secret: the Democrats don't really want to solve the issue.
No,
and when they talk about
because
getting immigration reform,
solvable.
They don't even want that. They don't want it. They want to basically have it as a bludgeon. Republicans are racist. They don't like people from south of the border. This has nothing to do with color of anybody's skin. This has to do with the fact that we've got intense, immense illegal activity going on, drugs, guns, sex trafficking, the whole 9 yards, and it's being done by, and I'm going to say it, a transnational terrorist organization, these cartels, and it's got to stop.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unbelievable to me that we're back at this point again, and that when it seemed like it was being solved.
It's mind-boggling to me, but the states are going to have to step up and do our part because right now the federal government is totally not to say complicit would be too kind. Yeah. The fact is they're enablers.
Sure. So you're traveling the state.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been down Pinal County, been in Pima County, the People's Republic. You've been all around. I'm a refugee, so it's okay. What else are you seeing? What else are you hearing? What are people really talking about? And what do they want to see differently from their next governor?
I think that, a lot of people are still talking about COVID and what happened during COVID and how much government, kind of twisted things to their benefit, and how government is using COVID basically to bludgeon people into doing things just to basically get control or to, exert their power and authority over people. People ask me all the time, if you'd been governor during COVID, would you have closed business down? And I wouldn't have. My dear friend Ron DeSantis in Florida and another dear friend, Chrissy Noem, South Dakota, they didn't close down business. When you look at health, you have to look at the whole spectrum. Was it a good thing for health when the suicide rate went through the roof, when people were losing their jobs, or the kids were home and not learning, and the drug rate went through the roof, and spousal abuse and family abuse?
Yeah, all the metrics went off the charts.
All of them went off the charts.
All the bad societal metrics.
That's not good for health.
Yeah.
So, I'm a big believer in freedom. One of the other issues is medical freedom and, dealing with, the vaccinations. Look, people need to do their research, talk to their doctors, and figure out for themselves what's best for them.
Exactly.
Government shouldn't be dictating those solutions. One of the big reasons I went back to Washington this last time was to fight against Obamacare, because I didn't believe that the federal government should take over our healthcare system. I don't believe that government should get in between between a doctor and a patient, trying to tell them what to do for themselves. And I believe that very strongly when it comes to this medical freedom issue. And it breaks my heart that you've got companies out there that are telling people, if you don't get vaccinated, you don't have a job anymore. It's a wrong decision, and we ought to push back. This isn't the America you and I know and love. People ought to be able to make those decisions for themselves.
Well, and also and we've talked about it on this podcast extensively, there's not a recognition of the third way. And the third way is, if you've had COVID, you have natural immunity.
Exactly.
And so a lot of people are jumping up and down on these companies, to your point, and saying, hey, wait a second. My doctor has told me I don't need to take the jab because I have natural immunity. Isn't there a different dispensation for me?
Well, and it doesn't provide a lot of comfort to people when you hear that all the numbers of breakthrough cases, and while they try to downplay and say there's far less death and far less hospitalization, okay.
Larry Hogan, the governor of Maryland, the other day made a statement that 40% of the deaths in Maryland recently were people who had been vaccinated.
Well, and you probably just read in the last couple of days about Colin Powell's death.
Sure.
And he was a breakthrough case, and he died of COVID.
Well, not really, though. I mean, that we can get into that, but I mean, he was very sick with both Parkinson's, he had blood cancer, and your natural immunity is really compensated, and COVID. So we've said it on the show, is the quickening. I mean, if you're suffering from obesity, diabetes, heart disease, any of these comorbidities that are severely affect
who knows what it ended up being.
Yeah, severely affect your immune system, COVID just speeds it up.
But it also, I know a lot of cynics out there that assert, and I'm not sure they're wrong, that a lot of the people that are coded COVID is because you get additional money from the government when they're coded COVID. My father-in-law, he was 94, passed away, and they coded him as COVID. We're not buying it.
Yeah.
But the fact is that getting back full circle, as I'm talking to people, they want freedom to make their own decisions. They want freedom to go to their school board meeting without being labeled a terrorist. And there's another one. I mean, come on. In America, you're saying that somebody that comes to a school board meeting and challenges the curriculum, if they don't like the idea that their kids are being taught some woke agenda, whether it's critical race theory, which is nothing more than warmed over Marxism, or they're being taught, something couched as sex education, which is really pornography in the 2nd or 3rd grade, and their parents want to go speak up. Yeah, sometimes they get a little animated, but does that mean they're terrorists? I mean, come on. That's why we need a governor that's going to stand up and say, I'm sorry, guys, not going to happen in my state. You want to send your FBI investigators into our school board meetings? Well, maybe we'll have our National Guard at the door and see if you can get by them.
Sure.
The fact is, we need strong governors.
Or the sheriff.
Or the sheriff to say, you know what? In Arizona, we actually believe in free speech. And you know what? If you're going to try to impede on free speech, you're not welcome in there.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that threatening school board members or violence or anything like that
No, I'm not condoning.
wrong.
No, I'm not condoning that. But to label everybody that goes to a school board meeting to testify against something they don't like
As a potential terrorist.
as a potential terrorist, that's
which
crap.
is what the AG was alluding
That's
to.
exactly Merrick Garland. And what blows me away is that, one of the candidates I'm running against praised Merrick Garland, said he was wonderful. He should have been Supreme Court justice. It blows me away that we don't call this for what it is. We've got a government.
Now that's an incredible statement.
It is, but it's true. What really bothers me, Chris, though, is that you've got a government out there that wants to nationalize everything.
Sure.
And our founding fathers believed that the states had more power, really, than the federal government. And this idea that we're going to nationalize our police force, and I wrote an op-ed. I believe that what's going on with DOJ investigation of the City of Phoenix Police Department is nothing more than a backdoor way to try to nationalize our police department or defund the police. The woman that
well, that's really what the defund the police whole movement is about nationalizing the police
That's
force,
exactly it. They
having national standards for your local
having
police
national standards, because Kristen Clark, who is the deputy AG that Merrick Garland has signed to investigate this thing, she wrote a piece last year saying that we should defund the police.
Sure.
Okay. And then she said, and if they don't, about the City of Phoenix Police Department, if they don't accept our remedies, then we'll litigate. Well, that's a railroad job.
Sure.
And it's nothing more than trying to institute their values on our police department. The fact is, I think that in Arizona, we should have a state chief executive that stands up and says, you know what, you're not doing that in this state. We believe in our law enforcement folks. We back the blue, and you're not going to come in here and undermine them.
Yeah.
We've got to start being a lot more vocal and standing up for our rights as a state to exist and to do things the way we want to do them, not like California or New York.
Well, and we're getting a lot of people from California and New York here. That's changing the political landscape a little bit. And how do we best communicate conservative values to folks coming in? How do you see that?
Well, what I do is, I've been in.
Now leave your California.
I've been
California.
I've been in Prescott, probably 10 times in the last 4 months, and in Mojave County down in Lake Havasu, and I would say a large percentage of the people I've shaken hands with are from California.
Yeah.
Because they're telling, how long you live
drive
here?
around town. They're everywhere.
I've been here a year. I'm from California.
Sure.
I'm like, I look them in the eye and I say, remember why you left.
I bet they get that a lot.
Then they chuckle and they go, don't worry, I'm a conservative.
Yeah.
The fact is that, got a lot of refugees from California, and they need to understand that, don't Californianize Arizona, or you're going to make it into the toilet bowl of California is now.
And that brings up a great question. So, I mean, right now the economy of Arizona is humming along pretty well. We've regained most of the jobs that we left during the pandemic.
Right.
Is there anything you would do differently than what our governor has done?
So, one of the things that Ducey promised when he was running the first time was that he would get our income tax to zero. They've gotten it close.
Yeah.
It's at 2.5. It's a flat tax. I'd like to get us to zero so that we could compete with Texas, with Florida, with Nevada, who all have no income tax. And I am a believer that our revenues will grow naturally, just like Ronald Reagan and Trump, who cut taxes and revenues grew. If we got rid of an income tax, I believe that we'd be beating the right kind of business, high-tech, high-dollar businesses. We'd be beating them off with a stick because coming to a state that's low regulation, low taxes, on income tax, doesn't have an income tax, I think they would come and they pay property taxes, they pay sales taxes,
Sure.
and our revenues would grow naturally. But I also believe, one of the things I do really like that Ducey did was trying to get rid of some of the regulatory barriers from entry into business, like recognizing occupational licenses from other states, which I think was I'd like to continue that, look for more of those kind of opportunities. But the last thing on economic development that I think is really, really important is to have a really first-rate educational system, and we don't. And it's not just about dollars. It's not. Because one of the best performing districts in the state is out of Nogales, which is one of the poorest districts. It's about accountability. It's about not teaching crap in schools, but teaching reading, writing, math, science, civics, and vocational education. Those things really make a difference in people's lives. And I think that part of the problem in our K-12 schools is that they're always trying to gear every kid toward college. Not every kid's going to college.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So let's realize that and have options for them. My wife just went to work for the East Valley Institute of Technology, EVIT, where they're doing a wonderful job taking kids, and they've got 40 different certificate programs where kids can graduate from that entity and go into an $80,000 a year job as a plumber or a welder. And I think those kind of things.
And those jobs are hot right now.
They're really hot
because we don't have enough of them.
So we
don't
need
have
to
enough craftsmen and tradesmen,
right,
in the workforce right now.
We need to have multi-track opportunities for kids because not every kid is bound. And what we have learned is that if a kid loses interest because you're trying to jam them in a round peg into a square hole, that they'll drop out. And so if you have other options for kids like voc ed, then they're going to stay in school and they're going to learn and they're going to graduate and they're going to do well for themselves. But the other piece is I'm a big believer in school choice. And I really do believe whether it's this woke agenda, critical race theory now, what's the crap coming from the left, a week from now or a year from now, we need to have school choice so that parents can vote with their feet. They can take their tax dollars with them to whatever school they want to go to. And if their kids are in an underperforming school or a school that teaches things they violently oppose, then they should take their kids and put them in a school that works for them.
And that's one of the things that Arizona, as a free state, has pioneered.
Yeah. I was one of the original sponsors of charter schools.
We've been one of the shining bright lights of America.
We have, but we can do more. And I want to see us do more. I believe that competition makes better products all the way around. It does in the free market. It will in school. Because if people think, wait a minute, if I don't listen to my customers, the parents out there, if I don't listen to them, they're going to leave, and we're not going to have a job anymore. Do you think they're going to wake up and smell the roses? I think they will.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
we
you.
really appreciate you being here.
Thanks
and here
a lot.
at Light Beer Dark Money, we are all about faith, freedom, free enterprise.
Yes, sir.
I think we've touched on all those. And you can find us on all your favorite social media, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And appreciate everyone listening. This has been Chris Clements along with Matt Salmon, gubernatorial candidate. Thanks so much for listening, and God bless.
Thanks, Chris.